Can you see my screen?
Yes, we could see your screen, Marius. You're good to go.
Perfect. So, hello everyone, and thank you for being at this session, and thank you for inviting me in this awesome conference. Um, I'm Mari Zaharia, and I will speak about the control and security of the cloud resources in enterprises like constrained environments, to be or not to be cloud confident. So I will start by reminding some events that happened, and they continue to happen actually in terms of security events. Like the ones that are shown on the screen, maybe the most known one is the one with Capital One, which based on some misconfigured web application firewall. Give it that give it gave access to the attacker to fetch data from AWS S3 storage and exfiltrated some data. The same thing may happen also on Azure side, not only on AWS. It may happen also on Google side or whatever cloud service provider you have, and you see these effects in terms of impacts in terms of data leakage, image, brand image, and so on. So, I mean, these are the real problems today that we encounter, and that makes us ask ourselves some questions in terms of cloud usage. Is it like out of the box, take it at it and use it tomorrow morning, or shall we put ourselves a number of questions in terms of security, compliance, and so on? My name is Mario Zaharia. I'm the principal engineer and cloud solution architect at Societe Generale. I'm based in France. Societe Generale is one of the largest financial companies in the world in terms of retail, investment banking, mobility, very huge mobility, leasing pool, and other financial activities. I'm also a Microsoft Azure MVP in France. Um, I'm one of the co-organizers of Azure FR, Azure User Group France, and you can find me on LinkedIn and on Twitter or X if you want. So the agenda today is around. First of all, I will develop a bit more the context, but you've seen it already. Essentially, we will speak a word on the public cloud landing zones, and then we'll switch on the principle of trusting the cloud services. What is it, and what is the solution to the problem that we have? Then we'll speak about some challenges that enterprises encounter in this field in terms of implementing security and compliance around the cloud services, and then I will finish with a conclusion. So the context is once again we have these native cloud services. Which are systematically used in the public cloud. You're relying on them exclusively in order to implement your cloud solution. You have going to a mass consumption of your cloud, either in terms of number of projects or applications, or in terms of users themselves. And this becomes more and more problematic in terms of configurations of these native services, new features coming. They don't come with the default most secure configuration. Sometimes the CSPs intend to really give you the easiest way to consume that service because this is the entry point. It's important for them, and also you may have different levels of security appetites that companies have. Uh, uh, I have nothing uh, much to say about the cybersecurity risks happening in today's world, which growed exponentially, especially after all these new conflicts come around, after the new wars coming, and particular new surface of new kind of hybrid war happening. So all these give us a very delicate context in terms of cloud security, and especially on the cloud services themselves. So let's pick a word on the public cloud landing zone. So first of all, what is the landing zone itself? The landing zone is a set of components, capabilities, which enable your application on, especially multiple applications together in a company, to be more secure, more reliable, to be more performant, to be accelerated. All this is the landing zone, right? And this is this gives you a pre-configured environment, typically a subscription in Azure or an account in AWS, that lets you host workloads, and you follow through this landing zone the CSP specific best practices, but also your company's best practices through that. Okay, and there are a number of a number of building blocks. I won't specify all of them. They're not at all listed all of the screen, but they are essentially, we can split them in two. The one are the ones which are I don't know, say close to the network interface, and they have a relationship with this network interface and network connectivity. That means they are deployed typically regionally in regions, and you have components in terms of internet access, in out, um, hub and spoke pattern in common infrastructure, the hybrid connectivity with your on-premises. These kind of things are network surface, right? And you have other, like global capabilities, which are the ones like IAM. Of course, in Azure, we speak about Entra ID or Azure AD. Historically speaking, you have in mind all the subscription management, because you need to have a very good way, a secure way to manage a subscription. You have the monitoring, incident management, cost management, all these kind of things, and you have this term of trust of cloud native services. So if we move to the next step, we recall what we're talking about as risks. We have a certain structuring of the main security concerns. These are definitely not all of them, but I can say they are the most one of the most important. We have, especially for the companies which are very concerned by the intellectual property. They are very, very concerned about data loss, right? And so this may be the first challenge that they have. But we should not forget about legal and regulatory compliance, especially in very regulated fields like financial, I don't know, security, I don't know, all these kind of very regulated systems, public sector, and so on. You have issues in terms of data privacy and confidentiality. If you leak your data, or the late data is available somewhere, that means the data of your customers is available. You have the problems in terms of operational incident response. You have the problems in terms of the data sovereignty. Especially in Europe, we have important concerns around that, and we are very focused on this part of control of residency and so on. So in order to address these kind of things, we imagine this term, this concept of trust. The trust of a public cloud service is the term in which a resource of that service type can be instantiated in that environment in conditions of security and regulatory compliance. Okay, and this is the context in which actually some kind of force the service to be instantiated correctly. And the question afterwards is what can be done in order to ensure this trust concept inside of a company. So let's go to the solution. The solution is composed of two parts. First is a methodology of risk assessment and mitigation. And the second is a tool or technical solution on how to enforce now this methodology that is put in place, at the risk mitigations that were defined into place in that cloud, in those resources, on those resources. So let's speak about the methodology first. uh, there are multiple frameworks in terms of cloud security, and definitely not the one to address all these aspects, and it's not the time to do it. By the way, I'm not a security guy, and this is my humble disclaimer, but being involved with security teams together in much of these topics, I'm allowing myself to speak about these topics. So we'll focus on this kind of segment, which is focused on three axes. First of all, uh, a generic assessment of the OCSP, right? At the beginning, when you start working with the CSP, you don't think that everything works perfectly there. You want to understand how this CSP works in terms of security compliance, how this respect the rules. So this is the generic assessment that you do at the beginning when you sign the contract. And depending on your, ability to discuss with the CSP, even if these are very huge companies, you may have access to informations that, and now the CSPs actually give a lot of information in terms of more and more transparency, how these things are assured in terms of security and compliance. Once you sign this contract and you assume these risks, you move to the next step. The next step is how to ensure this risk assessment and mitigation of the services and features inside the CSP, right? And the third step is to ensure that the application itself is analyzed and covered by risk mitigations, and there's an application review and everything. Maybe the ones who are really involved in security know better than me on ARAS and things like that. But no, we will focus on this thing in the middle, which risk assessment and mitigation design with the CSP. And we have a workflow for that, typical workflow if you want, okay? It's a pretty logical one, and let me explain that a bit. First of all, you'll do the risk definition and assessment. The security team will do that. It will review uh, um, what kind of risks, types of risks first, and what specific risks arrive for a particular type of service. Let's say Azure Storage and Blob inside the storage Blob. So they will take a look and say, okay, for this Blob, what kind of risks they come. Of course, data leakage, if you leave an Azure Storage Blob public, it can leak information to the world. This is one kind of risks, right? Then we'll move to the risk mitigation. Okay, this now the security team will write a document together with the implementation team. I mean, actually, from this step, actually, the security team will write this risk definition, and for the mitigation, it is written actually by the implementation team. Why? Because it knows how really the cloud service works, and it can take a look on different parameters on, for example, for a storage account, how to remove the public access, to disable the public access. And so the implementation team will say that I will mitigate this risk by, implementing this part. The the mitigation then is validated and understood. Of course, it's much of an explanation cross teams on that to explain how these things should work. And then the security team will validate that. Moving to the specification step, like it's like a normal development life cycle. Define a user story, design for implementation, developed unit test, then move to integration. Integration is extremely important because when you develop these kind of things, very often the things are very integrated between multiple services. So that means you have Azure Storage, but definitely it's not used alone, but it will be used by an application, by a backend, for example. And we'll have a front end, and you have other things like, for example, the application is deployed in an app service or maybe in AKS cluster, things like that. So how this will be integrated. And then acceptance, important, of course, that the security team will test that, but also the pilot projects and teams. And then, of course, going live. And from that moment, we can say that the service is trusted and ready to use by the applications. The specific of this concept, and this is interesting, is that in this I mean, you put all the guards that the service cannot be used wrongly, but in the same time, you give the hand to the team to be autonomous in provisioning um, uh, the services with the autonomy. It's extremely important because this is really the concept of the cloud. If you block the service, the feature team to deploy, I mean, you know, uh, you limit I mean, the life cycle in these terms. It won't be good. And for the technical solution, it's based on this principle of a fully automated tool to secure these native services for the applications. And it's composed by a set of security policies which are implemented individually to address these kind of risks. And there are different types of security policies. First, you will have simple report security policies. It will report periodically or even on demand, the status of compliance of different security policies. You will have then alerts, and you may be notified by particular, policies which are very sensitive, and you will receive that something happened, and that means the status is non-compliant anymore. Then you have things like protect, and that means you are able, in some cases, to really activate security policies in the cloud, which quietly blocks the deployment. You cannot deploy that resource without being, conform with the request. And this is the protect. Then we have remediate, which is situation in which it's more complicated to really protect at the beginning. Maybe it's a more complex configuration, and in that case, that policy will come afterwards and correct the deployment that was made. And it could be happen even in terms of minutes right afterwards. And then you may have different particular configurations if your customization request is important to configure controls and enforcement for each applications. Typically, these kind of things come as a full bundle of template or template or blueprint, we can say, right? And it's a standard for all the applications at least in the department, in a BU, maybe for the whole company, depending on the elasticity of different departments. And then, depending on the security risks that you want to accept for that application, you may customize some policies, right? And this is the same thing, but put a bit different as a process. Say, the security officer configures the security policies for the perimeter. Then the security policies are deployed, and these kind of policies are deployed with a deployer. Then the project consumes the CSP services openly, right? And it will apply these effects. And then the security officer or the SecOps team will read reports and acknowledge alerts on what's happening, okay? What kind of services do we want to use for that? In Azure, we have the privilege, let me say it's a privilege, to have this particular service, which is Azure Policy, which is the core solution for this kind of compliance and security and trust of cloud native services. Why? Because it's really at the core of the engine of Azure, and you can rely on it strongly to, enable all this approach. And believe me, it's not the same thing in the other cloud service providers. I'm not saying that because I'm an Azure MVP. That's very good. I'm working in my company with other cloud service providers like AWS, but it's much more complicated to do it in AWS, by the way. So Azure Policy is this service itself, which lets you build individual policies, either built in or they are built in already, or you can build custom ones to enforce configurations like, restricting to particular regions, established tagging standards. Like I said before, for Azure Storage, disable public access for certain services. So you add policies to your resources, and then you apply these policies at scale for all subscriptions that you want. Even at the management group, you can put it at the root level if you want, and that will apply on all the hierarchy of the subscriptions of your company. And then you can monitor through that the compliance, and you can follow up, over time. You can aggregate multiple policies together in what we call initiatives, which are groups of policies, and this is very strong. This, you have a glimpse of the policy uh, interface in Azure Portal, and you can see that these are ways of assigning different policies, enable monitoring in Azure Security Center, assignment of approved images, and so on. And then this is the compliance report, and this is how it looks in terms of showing whether a policy is compliant for a particular service or not. And you find a number of resources, compliant, non-compliant, how many are covered, the name of the policy itself, all the stats necessarily. You can make exemptions. This is very practical if it's complicated for you. And you can filter, of course, in terms of scope, by subscription, by management group, by resource group even. You can select by built-in or custom. You can filter by compliance state, and you can research by anything. This is a compliance report that you rely a lot of it. Other particular very useful tool is Azure Monitor. We let you capture the information and then transform it into alerts, and then send that to to alert action group and things like that. And this is how a glimpse of how it looks in terms of alerts reporting with different levels of severities. Azure Automation is another service that may be very helpful, especially for remediation situations, because sometimes you cannot do everything in Azure Policy, and this is very complementary in that. And in that case, if we want to put different things in terms of solution for different building blocks of the of the trust solution, you can see that we use Azure Policy in report, protect type of policy. Sometimes even for remediate, we can have policies that can remediate themselves. They apply pretty largely, but sometimes we need automation. And also we complete the alert part with some automation to automate this kind of things sometimes. And then for alert, you use Azure Monitor. And the configuration, you can do it in Azure Policy itself. And the Monitor will also use for notifications, of course. So let's see what kind of challenges we may have in your cast of trusting cloud services. First of all is the cost of implementation. Of course, you need to pay specifically for these features to be implemented. Really, all this process is very, very lengthy at the end, because the security processes are long globally, but all this validation and things like that, it may take months for trusting a particular service, because it may be complicated and so on. You may have variations inside the company in terms of technological maturity, of how the DevOps is used as culture, a different security appetite and things like that. And of course, we should not forget the evolution of the cloud, which moves very fastly. And by the time you finish the thing, new features may come out. So how do we solve that? We want to privilege a central common trust solution across the company. Why? Because we mutualize all the costs across departments, and we leverage existing frameworks. Uh, Especially the CSPs started, defining these kind of things as you find them in open source sometimes. And so this technical tool is supposed to be managed and operated at the group IT level. And then what is also important is to privilege a collaborative workflow with the business units, because we need a lot of understanding on how the things work inside the featured teams, and this is absolutely key. You need this kind of collaborative workflow even in terms of contribution to the mitigation solutions. And then apply a proactive technological watch with the CSPs, because you need to follow up this evolution of the cloud technologies. Variation of risk appetency among business units. You may have, in that case, is if your BU is maybe more, agile, want to move faster, versus another one which is much more regulated, much more sensitive to maybe risks, systemic risk, let's say like that. Maybe you may have different an approach with a common baseline of policy securities, and then you have specific sets of security policies applied for those BUs. And you may apply this denominator like 8220 to adapt to the situation. What about the emergence of multiple solutions for the same problem? Because we're in the agile company, right? And people start building things. We want to really try to understand that as soon as possible, to try to converge a divergent solution in a common shared one, because the more you move on that path, the more money you losing to doing the same thing. And then what are the impacts on the constraints of the constraints for the applications and projects? Of course, the projects are now much more constrained on the design and architecture, on the development process. So you need to accompany projects in implementing these trusted CSP services. You try to tell them how to apply the best practices, share them particular templates of deployment of how a service or a pattern of application is ready to be deployed and will be compliant with these parameters, if respecting parameters like this. And then what about the other public clouds? Because we have spoke mostly about Azure here. It's definitely the same methodology, but the technical solution may be radically different, because it's not the same technology. They look to be similar, but not necessarily. And you have different maturity and culture differences in your team. So be careful in terms of how do you address that. You need to make some kind of balance between the common methodology. If you are multi-cloud in a company, really need a more common methodology, and then apply specific technical solutions for the CSPs. Okay, you should not go in that case with a thing like I have a central solution, technical solution for both CSPs, which is agnostic of the things. I think behind you need to rely on native capabilities of the cloud. This is inevitable in order to do the things well. And as a conclusion, you can definitely gain confidence in the public cloud with this approach, but it's not on the shelf. And it takes some important amount of effort, energy, money, of course, but it's unavoidable to gain this confidence. It's important to reuse existing implementations, CSPs, third party. There are already solutions in the public field right now, which started implementing, as a SaaS. Please go and take a look of them. Uh, Things like, let's just give a name in the year like this, like Palo Alto. Companies like Palo Alto started working on this kind of things, or Checkpoint. Let's not privilege one, but take a look on their solutions. But have in mind that their solutions are not necessarily complete for your situation, and engage your application owners and business units into the game. And this is only the smart part of the cake, this one. If you want to really see how the things happen on the whole context of the landing zone, we have to see each other again for another topic in the future. Thank you so much for your availability today. I think I had end slide, but I don't know where is it. So thank you so much again. You have questions? Anyone still there? Thank you once again.
All right. Yep.
Thank
I'll
you so
take.
much.
Yeah.
All right. So everyone, this is Mandeep. The moderator. I'll take forward from here. So if you have any question to Marius, please feel free to drop on the chat window. So there, Marius will try to answer that. And if you have any questions, you can just unmute yourself and ask it.
I'll move again by the end of the session to have this conclusion once again shown. Okay, so in that case, I will stop sharing my screen and thank you once again for being part of my session, and see you soon for another topic, of course.
Thanks for your time, Marius.
Marius. All right. So